So when is your trip to the White House?
Well, typically it's in the season following when you win the championship. At this present time, there's not been an invite, so I don't believe there'll be a trip to the White House.
No invite. Why would that be?
I think that it's hard to believe that it's probably because we're a women's sport and it maybe is not on our president's radar. That was something that I really appreciate about our past president, that he was passionate about a lot of things. He was genuine, authentic, fun to be around. He was into women's sports. He had 2 daughters. I think that probably helped. But he knew about our game, and that's what made the experience really meaningful. He knew our players. He knew, about the series we just played in when he called us to congratulate for the championship. And then obviously it was really, really fun times to go visit him in the White House.
I'm going to ask you exactly what it was like to visit the White House, because I've been on the White House tour. I've never been celebrated at the White House, and I never will be. So you have a different perspective. I do want to introduce the Cheryl Reeve show. She is Cheryl Reeve, of course, longtime coach, and now is general manager the right umbrella term? Is it president? I mean, what's the
general manager? General
manager of the Minnesota Lynx, the 4-time WNBA champions. I'm Jim Suhan. This is my network and our network, talknorth.com. Check out this show and all the shows at the website. Subscribe on iTunes. And we are just starting off Cheryl's show. We would like to make this a success on many levels, including financial. If you'd like to sponsor the show and reach a very dedicated and passionate audience, you can reach me at jsuhan@startribune.com. So what is it like to be celebrated at the White House?
Well, there's nothing like it in that, you mentioned being on a tour at the White House, and, it's not like you get to visit top secret rooms or that sort of thing. It's more about the feel of the celebration and, the way that we're treated and, the things that we get to see, the things we get to share with each other, to be there as a team and, to be able to bring some of your family and just, the events of the day. And then, the really private time that we get to have with the president. I remember the first time we did this, our team, we're about to share a room with the president and, the one-on-ones, the handshakes, look into your eye, talk to you, know something about you. He was just so gracious and authentic. And then the team, then left that room to go into the room where we were going to be celebrated. And I was following the team and he kind of pulled me back and he's like, no, you stay here with me. And I had this moment and I thought, okay, no one told me that about this part. And, I had a couple words that I was going to say and I wanted to make sure I didn't mess that up. And next thing you know, it's just he and I, standing there waiting for our time to enter. And, you had this moment, wow, this is really cool. You try to, have a conversation, but it's, the gravity of the moment, sometimes you kind of go, is this really happening? And then all of a sudden you hear, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and head coach Cheryl Reeve. And I thought, this is really cool.
That's pretty good.
You go from little farm girl in Nebraska growing up, military family, and here you are at the White House and walking out with the president. So it was really something. And just to see our players, the smiles on their faces and the way that he engaged with them. And then in subsequent years, we let, the different captains have a chance to, address the crowd that was there. So just moments that we feel really, really proud.
One thing about whatever you think, whatever your stance is politically, whatever else, I think President Obama, the fact that he goes to George W. Bush's, Barbara Bush's funeral, is there with the Bush family and sits next to Melania Trump and just treats her well. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that speak volumes? It's
who he is. And that's what we learned. We said, well, is he just kind of putting on airs because he's the president and he's here with us for these, this hour. But it's hard. You don't fake authenticity, and he's very authentic.
Do you have a favorite? I'm a big serial TV geek, and there are a couple shows now that have scenes from the Oval Office. Do you have a favorite? First of all, did you get to visit the Oval Office? And do you have a favorite television show that's kind of based at the White House?
I don't remember the Oval Office. I used to work at George Washington, and so I'm kind of blending some different visits in there. Mm-hmm. So I've been very fortunate, actually. But I don't recall ever being in the Oval Office. But without question, my favorite White House show is Scandal. And I know that it's over now, and I'm actually quite a few seasons behind, so I'm not a huge TV watcher, but I especially enjoyed that one.
Let's get to a little basketball here. We talked in episode number 1 about Lindsay Whalen, her decision, your counseling with her on her decision. And it kind of leads to some questions that I think you've answered in some other interviews here recently. And that is, you have this great job. You're a linchpin now, both as a coach and a general manager. Would you ever be interested in coaching men? And the question I probably should have asked you last week was, has there ever been a college job that has come open that you would have considered?
Yeah, 2 good questions. I think I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in both college coaching and professional coaching. And, I think that the sport has evolved along the way, and even our thinking, as women in the sport, and people like Becky Hammond, Nancy Lieberman, Jenny Busek that have had the opportunity to be on the men's side. And there are others. There are other women that, whether it's the G League at the time was a developmental league, whatever it was called at the time. We've had some women dabble on the men's side of men's basketball. I've never been approached to coach men's basketball. But the mindset now for me is different even than what it was, say, 5 years ago. And that's not that long ago. Where I think in 5 years ago, I might have said, why would I want to do that? The women's game sort of needs women in it. And, that I felt my biggest responsibility was to take care of the women's game. And now I see it differently in that opening doors for women to coach anywhere is what's good for the women's game, and creating opportunities, seizing the moment and opportunities. I think those are all really important things to, kind of keep everything moving forward when it comes to women's sports. Do
you think, let's say you got hired 2 years from now to coach an NBA team? Do you think the more difficult aspect of that would be the role of pioneering, or do you think the more difficult aspect would be the actual mechanics of the job and dealing with men?
Well, I think the mechanics of the job would be easy, but what makes the job easy is when you are surrounded by people. And that the people make every experience. And so I think that in order for a woman to be successful coaching in any men's sport, there has to be a commitment in the organization around you that philosophically, this isn't a gimmick. This isn't, done for the wrong reasons. This is because, one, we think this is the most qualified person for the job at that time. And then making sure that your selection of people or the culture of the franchise is one that it's not about gender. This is the coach, and this is how things are going to go, and being supported in the right way. And so I wouldn't take just any NBA job. I think it would have to be demonstrated to me that culture exists and that it's a real thing. And when I say a real thing, the idea that gender doesn't matter. I think that's a hard thing in men's sports because it is the only thing left where women have not taken on a leadership role, and so it's deeply embedded. It's deeply entrenched in their minds that women are less than, so to speak, and so. Changing the minds of a lot of people like that is something that I think wouldn't be for everybody, But I think for me, if I were to have that opportunity, that would be not something I'd want to talk about every day. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about how we're going to get through a screen, how are we going to generate offense, and I don't want it to be about that. You would not be able to escape that until there are more women doing it, and then it becomes less of a topic. But my focus would want to be on winning games.
Yeah. Have you read about Doris Burke? She's done some interviews lately where she sounds worried about her next contract, and she said she worries about, being at a supposedly advanced age. Do you have any thoughts on what she's had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what makes Doris really good. And anybody I've been around that worries and doesn't assume that they're, going to get their next contract. That's what makes them good. That's what makes them keep working. That makes them improve. And so I think that's probably what's coming through there. I mean, obviously Doris is coveted as an analyst. And I don't think this is just, sort of, well, she's not bad for a woman. No, she's really a hell of an analyst.
Yeah.
And so, so I think there's humility there on her part, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I suspect that her worrying would be something that she won't escape. But I imagine at the end of the day, it's all for naught.
Yeah, I can't imagine them not keeping her around. And the funny thing about this too when they talk about Jessica Mendoza on the baseball broadcast, or Doris Burke. There are so many. Brandon and I talk about it all the time. There are so many bad men's announcers in every sport, and I don't mean that. I'm not obviously bashing men in general. I'm just saying that there are great men analysts, but there are terrible men analysts, and we could name 100 off the top of our head right now if we wanted to. So the idea that the best woman wouldn't be able to fit into that stratosphere is crazy.
I think that's true in everything. I mean, I think there are bad, men's coaches of NBA teams that I know. There was a couple seasons I looked at, so I know I can win 15 games. Like, I'm pretty sure out of the 82. So it's just changing mindsets. It's cultural. It's societal norms, that sort of thing. And men's professional sports, is one that's been a tough nut to crack.
On Tuesday night, you threw out the first pitch at a Twins game and did pretty well. It's not an easy thing. And we've seen, was it 50 Cent threw one almost backwards, I think? But you even see, athletes in their prime go up there and not really do it very well. Did you practice?
I'm never going to go out on a mound in front of people and not have practice. Mostly because I think I would throw my arm out and have to have it nice. And I didn't want to have an injury coming back here. And but no, we spent a couple days just here at our practice facility, and Walt Hopkins, one of our assistant coaches, he was, we grabbed a baseball just so I could get the motion, so it didn't hurt real bad when I threw it, because that's a motion, you don't do it very often.
No,
and that's
it's unnatural.
It is. And, my only regret was not training from, a little bit more elevation off the mound. We didn't necessarily think we'd be actually on the mound. It was kind of fun being up there, but I had so much fun. I appreciate so much the Twins organization, the way that they, opened, the entire night to us. Minnesota Lynx that was everywhere, whether it was, on their LEDs and, just everywhere, and just interviews and it was just really special time for our team to spend together, be with our fans. And then also, for me, I felt like a little kid. It took me back 30 years, to when I used to play. It was something I really enjoyed. And that was probably my best sport as a young person, was probably baseball and softball.
Cool. Yeah. I threw a ball to my dog the other day and almost tore my rotator cuff.
That's what I said. I don't want to have a rotator cuff problem. But it was really funny. Lots of people were nervous for me. They said, just get it there. Please just get it there. I said, I'm going to get it there. I was sure I wasn't going to throw it in the dirt. And I purposely did not watch all the bad first pitches until after. I didn't want to have that stuff in my head. Yep. And then I watched it, and 50 Cent was hilarious. Yes. I don't understand how that can happen.
I don't either. I have no idea. What other sports do you favor as a fan locally? What will you go actually spend your money on?
Well, I love all the sports in town. I love all the major sports of, certainly, the baseball. I don't get to enough, obviously, because we're in our season, but I enjoy baseball. Love to go to the basketball games with the Wolves games. I go over to the Gopher games. I love hockey. I didn't get a chance to play hockey when I was growing up. My brother actually dabbled in it. My younger brother, he loved the sport. So we used to go to the games. I like the action. I like how fast paced it is. And then I've always been a huge football fan. Matter of fact, I grew up a Vikings fan. So that's kind of crazy. Well, I lived in Nebraska. So our first 9 years, as a young person, I was into the purple, and the helmet, and and then I really took to Chuck Foreman. That was my guy when we were in the backyard. We would emulate him. And one of the thrills that I've had here too was in 2011 when we got to the finals. Chuck Foreman came out to a practice, and I was like a little kid introducing Chuck to the team, and the team had absolutely no idea who he was. But I said, this is one of my childhood idols. I really enjoyed Chuck and spent some time with him, so it was a good time.
Yeah, we've had him on the network before. He's a nice man.
He is.
And it's kind of cool that he still hangs around town and
really
gets involved in all that stuff. And the Vikings have done a good job of really engaging their alumni base, where I came to town to cover the Vikings in 1990, and it wasn't quite the same back then.
Yeah. I think it's a strong organization right now. Great leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was lucky. I got to spend some time with Kevin Warren last winter to do a big piece on him, and he's an impressive guy.
He really is. Yeah, I agree.
So we talked about the Whalen hiring process. I'm wondering, I haven't talked to Lindsay lately. What's going through her head right now? I mean, is